With a splash of her hands, Jean stepped away from the window and addressed her husband again. "Well, why do you need that, dear? You just got a high position recently and you're going to pull a stunt like that. Honestly, I don't understand you, Grisha, no matter how you turn it. But it's a big risk. Can't you check all the documents?" The fact is that Gregory Viktorovich was elected mayor a month ago, defeating the previous head by a wide margin. This was quite obvious, since the former mayor, Leonid Vasilievich, was not popular in the city and things were going from bad to worse. The city was untidy, dirty, there were problems in the communal sphere all the time, and residents were no longer surprised by broken roads and clinics without repairs. For them it was already commonplace, but out of nowhere, Leonid Vasilievich and his entourage got luxury cottages outside the city, and in a protected area. The new mayor decided to start his work by checking the spending of budgetary funds. But it was not easy. The staff left inherited all sorts of obstacles to Gregory Viktorovich's work. They began to threaten him to mind his own business. But the head of the city was far from timid. Of course, the reporting documents were a mess and chaos. There was an urgent need for a full audit, and for a couple of months, with the involvement of independent experts. So the new mayor had a great idea. "We had to talk face-to-face with citizens of socially disadvantaged groups, as well as with homeless people. They certainly know the dark side of life in the city firsthand, but they will not just tell a representative of the authorities about their problems, fearing for their lives and health of their loved ones. So, there is only one way out, to become one of their own." His wife rejected the idea, but Gregory stood his ground. "Sweetheart, I've been trying to explain this to you for the last hour. Do you think that your husband is afraid of someone? Well, I don't care about any threats. I didn't get elected mayor so I could turn my nose up at every noise. Anyway, why are you so gloomy? Everything's going to be all right, so I'll be homeless for a few days. So what? The most important thing is that I'll know what's going on in the city, and that it will be easier for me to make any decisions." She exhaled sharply and said, "Okay, I guess we've been through a lot worse than this. I don't think it's going to be any harder than your decision to run for office." "That's great. You beat that bastard. Leonid Vasilievich will probably remember your resounding victory for a long time." Gregory prepared for his idea thoroughly. He stopped by the local theater, where his former classmate worked as the director, picked up a wig, and his makeup artist prepared makeup and told him how to use it. There were no clothes in the right size, so the mayor decided to find something at his dacha. The next morning Gregory was already rummaging through the closet of the cottage, where his shabby work clothes were found. Though distantly, they resembled the clothes of a homeless man. To complete the image, he deftly threw on a shaggy wig and made up his face as best he could. Back in the train to the city, the mayor walked cautiously, still afraid that someone would recognize him. But no, people passed by and didn't even pay any attention to him. However, soon an unpleasant incident happened, because of which Gregory almost gave himself away. A woman was selling fish from the tray, and when the mayor was passing by, decided that the homeless man scares away all her customers. The saleswoman jumped out from behind the counter and chased him away from her goods with a stick, and at the most critical moment she grabbed him by the hair, so much so that she almost tore off his wig. Gregory miraculously managed to escape from her clinging clutches, but the woman yelled after him, "You damn tramp, get out of here, you stink up all my fish." In fact, Gregory did not smell of anything, except that his clothes could soak in the smell of burnt autumn leaves. But the woman did not calm down, apparently by inertia she shouted swear words. "No matter what you say, but in people's minds a homeless man is an unpleasant type, who always reeks of rot and mold, and it doesn't matter that he washes, even if not every day, and if he is on the street and collects scraps, then he is a fallen man and an alcoholic." Stereotypes have so clouded the mind of society that there is little human compassion left. The next ordeal for Gregory was a meeting with two pensioners. As he walked away from the angry saleswoman, he did not notice how he ran into two old ladies. They were talking to each other peacefully, discussing the city news, and as soon as the homeless man bumped into them, they immediately switched to him. "Look where you're going. Don't hang around here. Go back to your almshouse. Lenny built it for you, so live there. so that decent people don't suffer because of you. What almshouse were we talking about? Gregory stepped aside and thought to himself, wait, I think I saw somewhere in the documents that the previous mayor allocated money for the construction of the rehabilitation center for people in difficult situations. But how could he verify it? Because he had not yet learned the job and did not yet have enough information. And then fate itself helped him. 2 other homeless men were passing by, and recognizing him as a fellow homeless man, they offered to go fishing with them. Gregory agreed, and 10 minutes later they arrived at the dumpsters. But before he had started the search, several other bums popped out of nowhere and attacked his companions with foul language. He was lucky and only got 2 blows to the shoulders, but they got a hell of a beating. After that, the biggest of the bunch came up to him and said, "Are you new here?" Gregory nodded in response. "You shouldn't mess with them anymore. They pry into other people's territory without asking." So he ended up in a small dormitory with about a dozen other disadvantaged people of different ages and genders. The one who brought him in called himself Semyon. "Don't be shy. Fall on the cardboard. We're all in this together, so get used to it." "What's your name?" I had to lie, and Gregory carefully answered, "Misha. I really do not have documents. I lost them, but I really want to recover them and get a job." Everyone around laughed in unison. "Well, you're a real jerk. Under Lyonka we have never had any indulgences, and even though there's a new mayor now, I don't think anything will change. We're not people to them, we're just trash." Looking at what they were eating, Gregory suddenly remembered the old women's conversation and said, "Maybe we can go to the canteen. I heard they built it especially for the homeless." Semyon got up from the floor and came up close to him and said to his face, "There is a place. If you want it, I'll show it to you. Come on." While it's still light outside, because it's a long way to go, wandering through mountains of garbage and bypassing abandoned warehouses, they finally came. "Here, look, Misha, in front of you is the soup kitchen for the homeless. It will soon be a year old." Gregory's gaze was drawn to the dilapidated building, and it wasn't even finished. Cracked foundations, skewed wall slabs and unplastered joints showed that the canteen was obviously built with violations and from the cheapest material. Now it was clear to Gregory, at whose expense the cottages grew up outside the city. The money on this place was buried considerable. "Well, Leonid Vasilievich, hold on, we'll figure it out." The mayor muttered to himself, but out loud he said unhappily, "Well, I'd heard that the canteen for the poor was built after all. The new mayor, it seems to me, will be no better. I don't know his name yet, but I don't know what's going on." "True, I don't know his name yet, but it's only a matter of time. All in all, it's all alike, and you need to get used to it. By the way, tomorrow we'll go to the field, and I'll show you 2 more objects of the shock construction of our government." Something began to become clear, and Gregory concluded for himself that the former mayor had been stealing budget money on a grand scale. Gregory decided that he would stay for another day or 2 and be a bum later. It helped him to agree on certain measures to support the poorest segments of the population. The next day, as Semyon had promised, he showed him these objects. One of them was an abandoned kindergarten building, and this despite the fact that there is a shortage of places for preschools in the city. Gregory remembered the location of the ruins and decided that the first thing he would do was to deal with the kindergarten. Children should not suffer from the irresponsibility of public officials. In half an hour they came to the empty warehouses, next to which, like a giant, protruded a fragment of a once functioning enterprise. Again Gregory felt bitter anger for letting the former mayor go quietly. Semyon turned to him and asked, with undisguised sarcasm, "Well, how do you like the tour of the city? Do you think that's all that's left of Lyonka?" Friend, no. I know enough places where you not only shudder, but probably lose your mind." "All right, let's go look for something. We have to earn some money for dinner." Gregory obediently followed Semyon, all the time looking back at the dilapidated building. It was hard for him to realize that the former mayor, Leonid Vasilievich, had led the city so mediocrely. A lot of money had gone to no purpose, and all he had managed to see today was just the tip of the iceberg. Most likely, as Semyon argued, there were many more holes in the city where the budget funds had gone forever. In the evening, when everyone had eaten a modest meal of stew, Gregory suddenly remembered his wife's words. And what do you need these subordinates for? They do their job, and you control them. Exactly. He did not know those people with whom he began to work. Some of the employees were left over from the previous mayor, and it was possible that they knew about the embezzlement. Gregory was shocked at what was being kept from him. He should have been able to stir up this hornet's nest right away, instead of being swayed for a whole month. It turned out that he was partly to blame for his weakness and soft-heartedness. Finally, he had a plan for how to proceed. With that thought he went to sleep, tossing and turning on the hard wooden floorboard. But sleep did not come, and he wondered why there was such injustice in society. After all, everyone has the right to a normal life, and the first, most important duty of the state is to take care of its citizens. These people, too, who have fallen to the bottom for various reasons, are citizens, and the state must take care of them. Some people get the fattest bites, while the rest of the citizens are satisfied with meager handouts. Gregory was offended by such stratification in the society, and inwardly he was even angry with himself for inaction. Being mayor for a month, he could speed up the process of launching important projects, and now, here he was, conducting an inspection as a bum. Gregory was looking forward to the next day. He wanted to get back to his old image and start acting as soon as possible. But then Semyon commanded, "Okay, there's a part-time job at the construction site. I need 3 men." Looking at Grigory, he smiled and said, "What do you say, Misha? Are you ready for hard work? It's not like picking up cans and bottles. You'll have to sweat a little." Understanding that it may take an indefinite time, Gregory, nevertheless, agreed. In addition, he got an opportunity to see from the inside how the construction industry works and what the salaries are like for ordinary people. It took only 2 hours for the head of the city to be completely exhausted, but that was just the beginning, because a wooden pallet rolled down his back. Gregory felt an unbearable pain and asked Semyon to take him to a hospital immediately. The homeless man rounded his eyes and said excitedly, "No way. They won't even let you in there. Let me take you to our little room. Varvara will apply her healing ointment. There you will lie down." But Gregory stood his ground, and then Semyon could not stand it and almost dragged him to the building of the polyclinic. He did not go any further, leaving Gregory on the porch. 2 minutes later a security guard came out to him. "Why are you sitting here? Have you brought an infection? Get out of here, before I take my truncheon away from you." Ignoring him, Gregory slipped inside the building and went straight to the front desk. There were several people ahead of him, but they all parted at once when they saw the homeless man. Even though he did not reek of bad smell, but still people waved their hands and demanded that the guard throw him out into the street. Gregory rushed upstairs, overcoming the aching pain in his back. Now he really needed help. After reading the inscription on the office sign, he knocked and opened the door. The nurse immediately cried out, "Get out of here. We don't accept homeless people." And only the doctor squeezed her lips squeamishly. "Have a seat. What are you complaining about?" Pointing to his back, Gregory said, "Yeah, I got pallets at a construction site. I don't think it's anything serious, but it still hurts." The doctor wanted to examine him, but a security guard and police officers burst into her office. They dragged Gregory by the scruff of the neck onto the porch. In the street they clubbed him a couple of times, but did not detain him. "Not to have your breath here in 5 minutes." With his head down, Gregory staggered toward the very shelter. But on the way to the hospital he met 2 women, one of whom was holding a small child by the hand. They seemed to be strangers, but what the woman said shocked the mayor even more. "My God. When is this mess going to end? It's impossible to cure a child. You can't get a paw for it anywhere." These words were the last straw in the cup of his patience. He bumped into Semyon just outside the shelter. "Listen, Semyon, I thought you said you found a bicycle in the dumpster. It's in working order. Can I use it?" Clapping his hands, the homeless man laughed. "Wow, how quickly they cured you. Well, how did the local medicine meet your needs?" Gregory wanted to say something, but Semyon interrupted him again. "Okay, this is all a joke, and I know how the homeless are treated there. If you need a bike, it's hidden behind the garage. Come on, I'll show you the steel horse, but you better put it back where it belonged." The bicycle was not a motorcycle, of course, but it would do for a leisurely ride. "Take it, and fly at full speed toward your destiny. for I like you very much. Remember, nothing in life just happens. People are involved in everything and it's up to them what their life is going to be. Putting his feet on the pedals, Gregory drove in the direction of the dacha. It took him 2 hours to get there, but at least when he was in full safety a heavy slumber came over him at once. After he had crouched on the couch, Gregory passed out for a while, and only towards evening, as soon as he opened his eyes, he immediately turned on his cell phone and called his wife. Jean almost cried when she finally heard her husband's voice. Grisha, you said you were only away for 1 day. But you were gone for 3 whole days. They already called me from the mayor's office and asked where you had disappeared to. Hurry back home, or we'll have to put you on the wanted list. After changing into his usual clothes, Gregory got into the car and in half an hour he was already home. Jean hugged him tightly and could not let him go. Grisha, my love, you can't imagine what I went through these days. I kept watching the news, waiting to see what they would say about you. Well, you know how it is. If something happens in the city, it is sure to become known. Gregory hugged his wife and answered discreetly, "It's okay, I'm alive, and that's the most important thing. And what I saw there, no enemy would wish. You see, it is a completely different world, horrible, cruel, and people live there in a continuous nightmare. Without food, medical care, and the cold. While we are well fed and prosperous and pretend that this terrible world does not exist, but it is very close. How to understand that in our city there are 3 shelters for animals, and none for people. Now I know exactly what to do and will ensure that the money stolen by Leonid returned to the budget." He briefly told his wife what he had gone through. She listened with amazement, shuddering now and then when it came to his safety. He also told her, without holding back, that a number of facilities were in a terrible condition that urgently needed to be repaired. I was filled with anger and resentment when I saw the ruins. The very next day Gregory came to the mayor's office, and the first thing he did was to hold an operational meeting. Naturally, the questions of how and on what the budgetary funds were spent were raised. Employees of the former mayor's team were stubbornly silent, so he had to threaten the prosecutor's office. After their confession, Gregory immediately sent a request to law enforcement agencies, so that they decided to arrest Leonid Vasilevich. Afterwards, he decided to risk toward the abandoned kindergarten. In addition, he found investors to get the dying enterprise up and running. This was not so easy, given the fact that the money in the budget had already been stolen. Residents in the city were shocked by what Gregory Viktorovich did. Barely assuming the position of mayor, it cost him a lot of trouble to get help from the region. Soon he received an answer from the prosecutor's office. They took a firm hold of the former mayor. They promised to do everything possible to get the stolen money back into the budget. Simultaneously, the prosecutor's office brought a case of illegal use of protected land for the construction of cottages. Gregory rubbed his hands together. "That's it, you damn thieves. You've had it. I'll shake you out of these palaces in a jiffy, and we'll move the orphanage there. The old building is completely dilapidated, and next to the forest the children will be beautiful." Gregory did not neglect the very same rehabilitation center for the underprivileged. He instructed his assistant to assemble a team of builders and bring the facility to fruition. Of course, all this required a lot of time, but Gregory was firmly convinced that he would make all his endeavors a reality. Several days had passed since then, and only now Gregory remembered that he had promised Semyon to put the bike back where it belonged. Taking his wife with him, he went to the sporting goods store. Among the many steel horses, Gregory chose the one that was more practical and of higher quality. Jean looked at him and quietly asked, "And how are you going to return it?" "Just like that, come to him." Nodding in response, the spouse said, "You could do that, but I'd rather leave it in the same place." The bicycle moved behind the garages, where he also left a large bag of groceries. Getting into his car, Gregory saw Semyon appear from behind the garages. The bum saw the gift of fate and immediately began to baptize, happily grooming the bicycle from all sides. Gregory smiled and said to himself, "Well, now we are even." The new mayor had so much to do that at times he could not do anything, but Gregory did not give up. He was persistent in pursuing his goal, to make his city better and the residents happier. Nastya came home from work after a busy day and finally exhaled. The boss was as angry as ever today and scolded her, threatening that she might soon find herself on the street if she did not learn how to sell their products. She took a cup of coffee from the vending machine and wandered toward the subway, trying to get away from the negativity. Thoughts wandered in her head unhappy. I've only been working for 6 months, and I've already received a scolding. How can I increase these sales when the country is in crisis and no one wants to take the damn vacuum cleaner, and I don't want to go home? No one is waiting for me there. No one needs me in this life. The girl went down to the crossing, and again she saw the same beggar woman. It was a woman in her 40s who looked like a gypsy. Black hair, dark eyes, dressed in a strange long robe and a shabby jacket. She was holding a child in her arms, a boy about 3 or 4 years old in a dirty overalls, and he was sleeping all the time. The woman rocked him and begged pitifully, "Give a hand, good people. There's nothing to feed the baby. He's hungry." Nastia tossed her change into the tin and paused for a few seconds each time, trying to get a better look at the baby. She did not know whether it was a doll or a real live baby, and if so, why did he sleep all the time? He was not breastfed, right? Was he drugged or something? Today the boy's hat was pulled up, and Nastia had time to see the curly hair and the interesting mole on his neck, shaped like a seashell. But the gypsy girl immediately looked at her angrily, and began to mutter something in her language and cover the baby's face with her hands. Nastia even felt uncomfortable, and she tried to leave as quickly as possible. But even at home, even into the night, this poor sleeping boy would not leave her mind. Who was he? Where had the dark-haired gypsy come from? She looked nothing like his mother. The poor boy, just as she had been, had found himself in the hands of strangers, and no one wanted him at all. Nastia went to the mirror and began to examine herself. If you turn sideways, a very pretty face, fresh skin, long eyelashes, and dimples on the cheeks. You just admire it. But as soon as I turned the other way, there was a freak. Yeah, the freak with the burn scar across his cheek. It made her face look a little twisted, and gave a slightly frightening impression. No matter how much she tried to cover it up with makeup, it was all in vain. The skin was damaged too deeply. The girl recoiled from the mirror, and threw it to the floor in her heart. It shattered into 100 pieces, and she sobbed bitterly, replaying the fragments of her life and the unfortunate accident that had divided her life into before and after. Nastia's mother died while giving birth, so she only saw her in family photos. She was raised by her father alone. The man's name was Yegor Yefimovich. He was a hard worker and a front-runner at the aviation company. Nastia loved her father madly. She remembered all her life his big, hard and warm hands, which lifted her so high that it was frightening, pressed her to him, and for a long time did not let her go. The girl saw how difficult it was for her father, how he was exhausted and torn between caring for her and work, and tried not to be a miser and obey him in everything. She was always the last one in kindergarten, but she never cried, just waited patiently. And when at last her favorite daddy came into the playroom, she jumped on his neck with a squeal of happiness. And how much pride and happiness she had when her daddy took her to first grade by the hand. He tied huge white bows for her himself, and he said, "So, Nasina, it's your first time in first grade. I can't believe you're already so grown up, my sweetheart. Study well and don't be afraid of anyone. If anyone hurts you, I'll twist your head right off." And Nastia did her best, and studying was surprisingly easy for her. She proudly brought her daddy A's in the diary, and he kissed her on the cheeks, stroked her on the head, and praised her. And on summer vacations she and daddy went to the sea. It was such an event. Dreams seemed to come true. Igor Efimovich was rewarded at work with a trip. For 10 whole days, at the store we bought flippers and a mask, a swimsuit for our daughter, sunscreen, panamas and caps. But the dream was never going to come true. Their tour bus had an accident one night. Gasoline leaked from the tank and instantly burst into flames. The door jammed from the force of the impact and the passengers were trapped inside, like in a terrible trap. The father did not get confused, first broke the glass near his seat and jumped out of the bus and carried his daughter away from the unfortunate place, and then went back to help the other passengers get out. The girl was crying and screaming, "Daddy, Don't go in there, please. I'm scared. But the man only encouraged her. Now, my daughter, be patient. Daddy, quickly, they're in back. I can't leave people there. Do you understand? Isn't it human? There are so many children there, like you. They want to live too, and they're scared too. Don't cry. He had more than 15 lives saved, including those of small children. The only thing was that he didn't have time to save himself, because the burning bus exploded. The blast wave hit Nastya as well, and the dross got on her face, leaving her with an ugly scar across her cheek for life. But the worst thing was that she was orphaned forever. Her father was posthumously awarded the Order of Courage, but what is the use, if he is not there and never will be? Nastya cried and screamed and had almost no memory of her father's funeral. She was treated in the neurological department and sent to an orphanage. There at first she withdrew and even began to stutter. The children laughed at her, teased her ugly and made scary faces at her. Nastya was malnourished all the time. It seemed to her that there was no place on earth scarier than this. Accustomed to the warmth of home and her daddy's love and affection, she felt very bad and lonely here. No one knows how all this would have ended if she had not been pitied by an elderly teacher, Maria Zakharovna. She felt unspeakably sorry for this battered little girl with such intelligent and inquisitive eyes, who by all accounts was well-groomed and homely. It was she who found an approach to her and took her under her wing. A woman who taught music at an orphanage, and observing Nastya and her emotional state, decided to sign her up for swimming because she knew that it was relaxing and had a positive effect on the child's psyche. And so it happened. Water miraculously worked on her, and Nastya became calmer and more confident. She began to make progress. She swam faster than anyone else, learned the breaststroke and crawl stroke, took part in competitions on a local scale. Her stuttering passed by itself. She and Maria Zakharovna talked a lot. The girl shared her sorrows and troubles, her successes and achievements. The woman even wanted to adopt her, as she had a strong attachment to her soul, but she was refused, because she was old. Her salary was small, she had no husband, her housing was rented. But nevertheless, with her light hand, Nastya transformed from an ugly, battered duckling into a beautiful swan. She had long, gorgeous brown hair, a supple, athletic body, and a pretty face. But that awful scar spoiled everything, crossed it all out. Maria Zakharovna taught her to live with it as best she could and kept repeating it like a mantra. You're a beautiful girl. Love yourself. Don't pay attention to your flaw. You have many other virtues. You are sure to meet a good guy, and he will love you. You deserve it, my girl. Unfortunately, Nastya did not manage to make a career as an athlete, although she had all the prerequisites. Despite numerous awards and diplomas, she was not included in the national team. She was an orphan. She had no protection, and there was also this frightening scar. Neither on TV nor in the newspaper could she be photographed. The girl was terribly upset, but her mentor supported her even here. After she left the orphanage, she helped her get a job as a manager at a small private firm, and through her acquaintances got her a nice room in the dormitory. She persuaded Nastya to study by correspondence, to become an economist. She kept telling her that she should not wear her diploma on her back. It would come in handy in life. But, unfortunately, 3 months ago Maria Zakharovna passed away. Her heart failed. Nastya longed and grieved for her. There was no one to share good and bad things with. No one understood her like she did. The girl did not have any friends either because of the scar, or because she was an orphan. Her co-workers treated her with a certain coldness at work. Things were not easy on the personal front. When she was still an athlete, she met a boy, Valera. He was also from a poor family, raised by her grandmother alone. Outwardly, the guy was attractive, tall, athletic, with a stiff hedgehog and a strong-willed chin. Feelings arose between the young men, or rather, Nastya thought so sincerely. They met in the evenings, walked in the park, kissed. She often asked the boy how he felt about her disability. It was very important for her to know, but he only laughed and joked away. My darling, but you have an amazing figure. Don't worry about nothing. Soon he started coming to Nastya's house, and then he even stayed overnight. So their first intimacy happened. Valera was tender and affectionate, frantically whispered words of love, and swore fidelity to his bride. Nastya just sank into his arms, and dissolved into an ocean of passion without a trace. The girl was happy. She rushed after work. She tried. She pampered her beloved with delicious dishes. She pleased him in everything. When she received her salary, she bought not herself but her fiancé to copyright one thing and then another, starting with trendy headphones and ending with clothes. She made do with very little, a minimum of makeup, and a couple of office dresses and suits with one pair of shoes. That's the whole closet. She hoped he would appreciate her care and warmth. She dreamed that soon she and Valera would marry and live as a friendly family. The guy worked as a courier, earned a penny, and most of all dreamed of getting out of poverty, of becoming rich, was just obsessed with it. But he had no intention of working too hard, or of slaving away for 12 hours at a time. He wanted wealth to come to him in some incomprehensible way. Nastia did not share his views. She believed that the main thing was love and trust, and without money one could endure. Not everything in their relationship was smooth. They rarely went out together. Valera somehow became cold to his bride, became rude to her, and sometimes made cruel jokes. Literally everything became wrong for him. Nastia was very hurt by this, and they fought more and more often. She did not understand what was going on, but somehow a woman's intuition realized that her beloved had someone. His behavior and attitude toward her had changed drastically. She was no longer Goldilocks and sunshine, but suddenly became chicken and naive fool. And one day Nastia came home and found a horrible picture. Her fiancé copyright was packing his things and running around the room. The girl was taken aback and did not understand anything. "Valera, what are you doing? Why are you packing? What happened at all?" he blurted out angrily in her face. "So you and I are breaking up. That's what happened. I met Reset and I'm leaving you. She may be 10 years older. It doesn't matter to me, but she's very rich. She has her own business, and what a car she has. Her own mansion in a residential district, and most importantly, she's crazy about me. Finally I'll get out of this misery, damn." Tears spontaneously, involuntarily gushed from Nastia's eyes. "What about me? What about our love? I was hoping that we were about to get married. And you, without love, will you be happy with this race? Does money mean everything to you?" The groom only murmured, "What do I need you for? Orphan, and childless, ugly. You'll never get pregnant. What will I see in my life with you? We'll live on potatoes from paycheck to paycheck. I don't want that kind of life, so I'm sorry." Nastia fell into a chair, covered her face with her hands and burst into tears. She did not utter another word, and only watched as her Valera sneakily escaped. An open wound was left in her heart. Since that day the girl generally began to shun men. She realized that nothing good could come of them. Every day she would go to her empty room, where no one was waiting for her, warm her supper, and cry without sleep. So lonely despite the fact that she was only 25, and everything was not so bad, but not much good either. And now all her thoughts were on that little boy from the subway crossing. Nastia had tormented herself all night thinking about him, and decided that today she would definitely go and ask the gypsy woman what her son's name was, and why he was sleeping. There had to be some explanation, right? So she did. She bought a bun, some candy, and juice after work, and from a distance she saw the familiar gypsy woman. She was still begging for alms, holding the boy in her arms, and he was still asleep. That was more than alarming. There was clearly something wrong with the child. The girl walked right up to the woman, handed her a juice and a bun, and said, "This is for your son. What's his name? Why does he sleep all the time? Can I give it to him myself? He must be hungry, right?" The beggar pretended not to hear, lowered her eyes, and wrapped herself in the collar of her worn jacket. The girl repeated the question. "Why is he sleeping all the time? Is the boy sick? Should we take him to a doctor?" The woman looked up again, her eyes tired with irritation mixed with indifference and aloofness. It was not a mother's look. She whispered with one lip, "Go where you're going." The girl was shaken up. She was already out of her mind and almost screamed. "Why is he sleeping, I ask you?" Nastia tried to take the baby by the hand and turn him to face her, but the gypsy suddenly jumped up sharply from the curtain and shouted in her own language, rudely pushing our heroine away. Some kind-hearted passer-by, an elderly man, threw some money into the glass, and reproachfully began to reprimand Nastia. "Why are you shouting? Wake the baby up. He's probably exhausted as it is, and he fell asleep. You see, she's not sitting here for the good life. Here, daughter, take some." The beggar immediately crossed herself, with a look of universal humility and sorrow on her face. Immediately two tough young men ran up to Nastya and started pushing her away from the beggar. "So, let's be nice and get out of here, or you'll miss your teeth. You were told to go your own way, or do you need a better explanation?" And a small knife flashed in his hand. A frightened Nastya just nodded and ran away, glad that she got away with it and realized the most important thing. The baby was really being drugged, and he was clearly not the woman's son, so it was a whole scheme. A criminal business. The girl was not going to retreat. She decided to save the child from the clutches of these mercenary crooks, who did not care about him at all, as long as passers-by threw money. Nastya pulled herself together and went not to her home, but to the police station. She emotionally began to confusedly explain to the officer on duty at the window what had happened. "You understand, that baby in the beggar's arms, he sleeps all the time." "Why? Because he's not her baby? He looks about 3 years old. Such a big baby can't sleep for 24 hours, so they're giving him something to drink? I'm ready to write a complaint. We must save the baby. He's obviously in danger. I beg you, check her documents." But to her indignation, neither the officer on duty nor the policemen who were nearby and were talking about something, when they heard what it was about, were not even going to take any statements from her. Moreover, they made a mockery of her. "Listen, citizen, what's your name?" "Grigorieva Anastasia. Go home and don't mess with their heads here." "What gypsy? What child? How do I know if it's her son or not? And why he's sleeping? And how long do children even sleep? I don't have any. Do I have to chase after every beggar? There's nothing else for us to do. We're up to our eyeballs in this mess. Do you want more than anyone else? Or don't you have anything better to do? All these people come around, taking up our time. If it were true, what happened, or if someone got beaten up or robbed?" Nastya only waved her hand. "It's clear. Nobody cares about the common people." It's the same as always. In the evening, scrolling through social networks, she suddenly came across the page of a volunteer who was searching for people on his own. He was posting photos and pleas of parents who were unsuccessfully searching for their loved ones, including their children. Nastya pulled herself together and wrote him everything as it was. She did not expect the answer to come so quickly, but to her surprise, Maxim, that was the man's name, responded instantly, listened to everything again and offered to join her. Looking through such ads, hoping to find a similar one, to look for a boy of 3. He, for his part, also promised to help, so they began to do it. Posted everywhere post Nastya that in the passage of the gypsy begging with a sleeping baby boy, but he was clearly not her, and the request to respond to those who are looking for a similar-aged child in their area. It's been a week. In the evenings Nastya's eyes were watering from the thousands of posts on help, and it seemed that she would never find what she needed in this whirlwind. Then suddenly, over the weekend, a man wrote to her. He was just begging for his phone number to call her, and soon he called. "Girl, honey, I came across your post. My name is Korolev Sergei. I am a businessman. 6 months ago my son disappeared, just 3 years old. He was stolen from under my ex-wife's nose, and all as in water, disappeared. Believe me, I had all sorts of connections. Would you mind sending me a picture of that kid you saw? Maybe I'll recognize him as my son. It's a long shot, but it's a chance." Nastya grinned. "How am I going to get the picture? I only tried to get closer and take the boy's hand, but I was nearly beaten by the bouncers who were hanging around. All I remembered was that he had curly blonde hair that fell out from under his cap, and a prominent mole on the back of his neck, closer to the back of his head, in the shape of a seashell." The man's voice almost broke into a scream. "My God, it's Sashenka. That's my son. That's my son. My son has that exact mole. I'll be there in an hour. I'm on my way. Dictate your address. You'll show me where you saw that gypsy girl." Indeed, in less than an hour there was a persistent knock on the door of Nastya's room. She opened the door and saw a pleasant man in his 30s in an expensive cashmere coat and crocodile leather boots. He fidgeted nervously with his briefcase, and got right to the point. "Good evening. Are you Nastya?" "And I am Sergei. We called each other the other day. I'm begging you, let's not waste any more time talking. Let's go. I've already called the police and backup. They'll be here soon. We have no time to lose. Nastya was surprised. Are you that determined? And if it turns out to not be your son, what then? The man answered quietly. Then I'll just save someone else's child from the clutches of criminals. You're the one who rescued him, aren't you? He's nobody to you, is he? You just took pity on the child, didn't you? So they got into the man's expensive jeep and raced to that very crossing. Nastya went down there alone first. There it was, the gypsy and the boy in the same place. Then the girl went back down and nodded to the man. He signaled to the police, and they rushed downstairs and surrounded the woman on all sides. The bouncers, whom Nastya had described, were all surrounded up, though they hurried away, seeing that a tough mess was brewing. Sergei snatched the baby out of the gypsy's hands and immediately sobbed, holding him tightly to him. Son, Sashenka found him. Bastard, tell me, what did you drug him with? Why is he asleep? I'll put you all in jail for a long time. Nastya was not confused and shouted at him. Sergei, hurry up and go to the hospital. We need to understand what's wrong with your son and how serious his condition is. You can see that he doesn't open his eyes or react to anything. The man handed his son in Nastya's arms, and they ran like the wind to the children's hospital. On the way, the girl stroked the baby's skinny, translucent cheeks, listened to his faint breathing, and whispered, "Have patience, my dear, just a little while longer. The doctors will help you, and you will get better. You'll meet your daddy, and everything will be fine." Sergei only whispered softly, "Nastya, honey, thank you. I am in your eternal debt. You can't imagine what I went through when my son disappeared. I didn't want to live. I wish he'd live. That's all I'm praying for. I wish my son would get well. Why doesn't he react to anything at all?" At the hospital, the baby was taken away and immediately sent to the intensive care unit. The baby's condition was critical. The doctors convened a concilium and held long deliberations. Sergei rushed through the hospital corridor like a tiger in a cage. He clutched his head, greedily drank water from the cooler, whispering something under his breath. Nastya sat quietly on the couch and prayed that the baby would get better. He felt sorry for both father and son alike. Both had suffered. Finally, an elderly gray-haired doctor with glasses came out to them. He looked serious and anxious. Sergei immediately ran up to him and asked in a frantic voice, "How is Sashenka? Is he going to live? What did those monsters do to him? Why is he sleeping and not reacting to anything?" The doctor took off his cap and sat down next to him on the couch. "You see, the situation is very serious. Your son was heavily sedated for a long time and not fed at all. That's why his body was exhausted, and he was on the verge of life and death. You could say you saved him at the last minute. Now he is on intensive therapy. He is severely underweight and malnourished. We give him medications to purify the blood and vitamins. We hope that little by little he will make it, but I want to tell you right away it is not a quick process. We don't know how his brain and the other organs are affected." Sergei clenched his fists. He was literally shaking. What a bunch of cattle. Nothing sacred. Stealing a baby to slowly kill it and make money off of it. It's unbelievable. And all this is happening under the noses of the police, and nobody cares. I'll buy the best medicine I can. You name it, I'll do anything to make my son get better." The doctor replied, "You're lucky, you might say. Usually such children are kept on alcohol or something worse, and they can die at any moment. We've dealt with that before, so sleeping pills are a gentle option, and the fact that it is a black business has been written about for a long time. Sincere people throw money away, hoping that it will go to the beggars or their unfortunate children. But it didn't turn out that way. The lion's share of the money is taken away, leaving only pennies for a bun and tea. Not only that, but most of the time the police also cover it up by pretending they don't know anything about it. I'll write you a list of medications, but you can't see Sasha yet. He's in intensive care. Come back tomorrow." Under the impression of the doctor's story, Sergei fell to his knees right in the middle of the hall and wrapped his arms around Nastya's legs, muttering, "Thank you, you are a guardian angel. If it weren't for your responsive heart, it's likely that Sasha would soon be gone. How terrible it is. Just thinking about it makes me sick inside. Ask me anything, I'll fulfill any wish you have." The girl became uncomfortable and began to lift the man up and whisper, "Come on, Sergey, get up. I don't want anything. I only did it because I took pity on the baby, not for the sake of self-interest. Let's go to a cafe nearby, and we'll talk about everything calmly. The whole staff is already staring at us." They sat down at a table in a cafe, ordered coffee, and Nastya asked, "Sergey, tell me, how did it happen that your son was stolen in the first place? It seems to me something unbelievable nowadays." The man sighed and began the story. "I had a bad marriage when I was young, and all my troubles came from that. Inga was very windy and reckless. While we were dating, I was head over heels in love, and I even liked that about her. She dressed brightly, looked amazing, experimented boldly in everything. But when I got married, I realized she was a lousy spouse. She pissed off all the household chores. Inga preferred, as before, to run to clubs and lead a wild lifestyle. I gave almost all my time to work, got very tired. I wanted, on the contrary, home warmth, understanding, and comfort. But every night I found only a mountain of unwashed dishes and a whining Inga. I told her 100 times to do something, to find something to do that would keep her busy. When she became pregnant, I was over the moon. I thought, well, now my wife will settle down, wake up in her maternal feelings, and our family will finally get peace and quiet. But it was not. After giving birth to Sasha, Inga immediately went back to her old ways. Boutiques, salons, glamorous parties. She purposely did not breastfeed, even though she had plenty of milk. So as not to spoil her form, she had to buy formula. It's unbelievable. She didn't take care of the baby at all. I had to hire a nanny. She was more help than my mother. My wife was psychotic and hysterical at night, and didn't want to get up to the baby. I always did that. Sashenka was drawn to me. He felt that I loved him very much. I tried to spend all my time on my son. It's a pity I didn't have more of him. I could not understand how a mother could not love her child and be so neglectful of him. We fought more and more often. Scandals were constant in our family. And then, on that fateful day, the nanny, as if on bad luck, got sick and asked for time off. Inga was forced to go for a walk with her son by herself. The child was playing on the playground, and this hen was just chatting with her endless friends on the phone and did not care about the child. She didn't even realize right away that strangers were taking him away, luring him away with the kitten. She did not even remember the signs of the kidnappers. She called me and got hysterical and started screaming that Sasha was stolen. That's how I lost my son. I called the police, private detectives, searched all the yards, back alleys, morgues, and hospitals. But Sasha seemed to have vanished into thin air. No leads, no trace. After what happened, I literally hated Inga. She became disgusting to me, and we divorced. I went to work, but every day and night I prayed to God that a miracle would happen and my son would be found. Although the police wouldn't give me a chance. They said too much time had passed, and for sure the boy was dead. But I stubbornly didn't want to believe it. I waited and hoped. A miracle finally happened, and the magician was you. Nasenka, thank you again. I'm ready to say it 1,000,000 times. Now it's your turn. Tell me about yourself. I noticed that you live alone. Why? Still haven't met your love? You're such a young and pretty girl. Nastya became sad and told about her life. What's there to tell? My father died in front of my eyes when I was only 7 years old. We were going to the sea together then. Got into a terrible traffic accident. And since then I have this ugly scar on my face. Then there was an orphanage. I don't want to talk about it at all. It was the worst place in the world. I went swimming. I won prizes. I got plenty of literatures. But what's the use? Who was going to let an orphan with the scar into the national team? They turned me down. I work as a manager in a small firm. I almost got married, but it didn't work out here either. My fiancé till the copyright left me, found an older rich woman, said he didn't want a poor orphan, and with a defect. That's how I live, all alone in this world. Things aren't going well in my life. I don't know why. I hate my face. Everyone's staring. And when I ask them something, they look away. I don't care if I go to ground. Sergey, can I come to Sashenka's hospital tomorrow too? To see him? I'm so worried about him. You have no idea. The man suddenly took the girl by the hand and said, "Why don't we talk to each other? What are we shouting at each other?" Nasenka, I don't mind at all. I'm even very happy if you visit Sasha. And in general, let's communicate. Let's be friends, shall we? We are not strangers to each other now, are we? Listen to what I have to say. Believe me, in my life I've met a lot of glamorous beauties, without a single flaw, but they can't compare with you. You have a kind of natural, inner beauty that beckons and attracts. I don't flatter you, I mean that sincerely. Let me give you a ride home, and we'll meet tomorrow for sure, okay? Nastya blushed. She was very pleased with such warm and sincere words of Sergei, and she liked her work. All her thoughts were on Sergei and Sashenka. Immediately after work she rushed home and cooked a hot, fresh meal and went to the hospital to see the boy. Sasha got better and was transferred to a separate room. Seryoza was already there. The boy looked very pale and emaciated. He was frightened, looking around, as if he did not quite understand where he was, and firmly holding his father's hand, smiling weakly at him. The man said something tenderly to him, stroked his curly hair, and he was happy with himself. Nastya quietly entered the room. The boy looked at her surprised and blinked his open blue eyes. She winked at him and said, "Hello, Sashenka. How are you, honey? Come to your senses a little bit. Look what I brought you. A real robot transformer, like in the cartoon. Take it." The boy immediately smiled, eagerly took the toy, and babbled quietly, "Thank you, you're good. What's your name?" Sergei answered for her. "Son, this is the same Aunt Nastya. She saved you from those evil uncles, and she made sure we met." Then he turned to the girl. "Nastya, I bought Sasha some new pajamas, but he's so grimy. It's like no one has bathed him in 6 months. It's like a nightmare. Can you help me with this? The doctor won't let us go home. He says we have to do more IVs and monitor his condition. Get a robe and a towel in a bag, and I'll take Sasha." And he turned to his son. "Well, soldier, let's go wash up, shall we? You look like a chimney sweep to me." The man picked up his son in his arms, and the three of them went into the shower room. After the bath, the boy was unrecognizable. Finally his cheeks turned a little pink. He was so cute, just like an angel. Nastya started to take food out of the bag. She chirped, "That's right, and now, after the bath, we need to eat at least a little bit. The baby is glowing, just bones." Sasha immediately grimaced. "I don't want to eat. If there's porridge in there, I won't eat it." "I don't like porridge," he whimpered. "It's not porridge." I ran home and managed to make mashed potatoes and a cutlet. "Just try it." "How good is it?" "With tomato." "Come on, a spoonful for Daddy." "And another one." "What about me?" "I tried, didn't I?" "That's a good boy." "And look, how can a robot shoot?" "Come on, Dad, can you show us?" "We'll have another spoonful." So, with persuasion and jokes, Nastya easily fed the baby, and he did not notice how he ate it all. Sergei could only marvel, watching this fascinating process. He began to praise the girl. "Bravo, Nastya. I'm ready for a standing ovation. Where did you learn to handle the little ones so well?" "Feeding my son has always been a problem. He always refused normal food and demanded mountains of candy." Nastya only shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know. At the orphanage I sometimes like to take care of the little ones. But there, really, you didn't have to talk them into eating. Everything was swallowed up to the last crumb. I'm just really worried about Sashenka, and I want him to get stronger and gain strength quickly." From that day Seryoza and Nastya began to talk a lot. She often visited them in Sashenka, and on weekends she could take the baby to her for the day if Seryoza was busy at work. She and Sashenka were very easy. They got along wonderfully, and the baby, to her surprise, never once asked about his mother. One day she made up her mind and broached this difficult subject with Seryoza. "Did you tell Anj that you found your son?" "She must have been happy. Doesn't she want to see her son? To hold him? To live with him?" "Excuse me for asking, but it's so strange for me." And Sasha never once asked about her. "I don't understand anything." Seryoza immediately became sad and replied, "Yes, you're right. It's not that weird. It's wild, of course. I called and told Inga the news. What am I? Some kind of animal? A mother? After all, we hadn't seen each other since the divorce. I thought she'd be happy, and she'd come running to her son. But no, turns out Tiga went to Bali with a young boyfriend. She said she was very happy, but said that she was not going to return yet, and that Sasha did not fit into her plans for the future. Can you imagine that? Her own son not fitting into his mother's plans? My hair stood on end. I told her I was going to have her mother's rights taken away and my son would stay with me. But she wasn't too upset about that either. She just blurted out, "Do as you please, that's it. Ciao. I have a massage in 10 minutes." And Sasha, my son, never felt from her return, warmth, affection. That's why he doesn't remember her. After all, to be honest, he spent 3 years of his life with me and the nanny, not his own mother. She was always worried about her son. That's the way it is, Nistya. And your son immediately reached out to you, and you, I see, and really fell in love with him, and I'm very happy about it. The girl answered sincerely, "You know, I really loved Sashanka like a son. Such a wonderful boy." Of course, it's still hard for him to adapt to normal life after being pilled with pills for so long, but I try to read him fairy tales. We are adding cubes and learning letters little by little. I think if we do everything with him all the time, everything will get better. Suddenly Serioza looked at her in a particularly heartfelt way, and said without taking his eyes off her, "I like you very much, Nastya. I've never met anyone like you. You're real. Can I kiss you?" He pulled her to him and kissed her tenderly. Nastya's eyes were blurry, and the ground was gone from under her feet. That night Serioza did not take her home, so they began to live together. Surprisingly, it was so easy and comfortable for the three of them at once, as if they had lived together half their lives. Meanwhile, Sergei and his father, the well-known businessman Korolev, made such a fuss that the police had to move fast. The best investigator Mikhailov was assigned to investigate the case. He organized raids and raids, pinned to the wall those very bouncers who threatened the death of Nastya, and uncovered a whole criminal scheme. It turned out to be a business of enormous proportions, in which officials and the police were involved. Many beggars slept and lived in the dirty garage, right on bare mattresses. These were either invalids or women with children who had been stolen, who were more likely to be served. They were mercilessly exploited, taking all their money. The poor people worked literally for a piece of bread, and that was it. At the same time, it was simply impossible to escape, and such desperados were beaten to death. What was there to be afraid of? They were homeless. No one would miss them or look for them. As a result, a lot of the heads who were sitting in the warm seats controlling this bloody black business got blown off. They didn't even care about the children, whether they died or survived. The main thing was that the child should sleep quietly and not interfere with work. But now all the perpetrators got what they deserved. Sergei personally supervised it. Serioza was determined, so as soon as he and his bride began to live together, on this first weekend he told her, "Get ready, Nastya. Let's go to my parents' house and get acquainted. Baked salmon, oysters, and lots of other delicacies are on the program. My mother likes to show off, so don't be surprised." The girl was really frightened. "Serez, maybe we shouldn't. I don't like these showdowns. And this scarf. I'm terribly embarrassed. God forbid they make fun of me. They'll say you've found yourself a wretch, and I can't even eat oysters. I'm afraid." But the man hugged her, kissed her, and began to soothe her. "What are you getting yourself worked up about? Everything will be fine. You'll see. Well, you have to meet your mother-in-law, don't you? Mind you, I'm going to marry you. You're mine alone, and I don't want anyone else, no matter how beautiful she is 100 times. So I won't take any objections. Run and get ready. We've got to get Sasha dressed, and that's the test of strength." Nastya was very excited. She put on her best chiffon dress with an elegant belt, let her hair loose and tried to cover the hateful scar with her long bangs. The image was completed with beautiful emerald earrings. They matched her green eyes and, as she thought, diverted attention from the mutilation. Serioza even whistled when he saw her. He started paying her compliments. "Wow, you look even prettier now. That dress suits you so well. So, son, how beautiful is Nastya?" Sasha held up his thumb and showed class. Nastya calmed down a little, and they went to Serioza's parents. They hugged and kissed Serioza and their grandson with great joy, but they greeted Nastya with obvious coolness. Although the man immediately hugged her, and introduced her to her parents. "Mom, Dad, this is my fiancée tilde copyrightee, Nasenka, who saved our Sashenka from those horrible people. She literally performed a miracle, and I meet my son again. Please, love and love." Her father, Igor Petrovich, shook her hand and said, "It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for saving my grandson. That's very noble of you." Her mother, Lyubovna Tilivna, only pursed her lips and said hello. Nastya immediately felt uncomfortable. From the first minutes she was in the house, everyone went into the living room. The rich table was laid there, and next to each plate there was a pile of cutlery, half of which Nastya had never even seen before. Everyone took their seats, and the dinner party began. More like a torture. Seryoza's parents focused all their attention on her. The only questions that came out were, "Who are your parents? What school did you go to? Where do you work? Where do you live? What education? Where have you been abroad? What was your favorite country?" and so on. When Nastya honestly replied that she was an orphan and was brought up in an orphanage, an unpleasant grimace immediately distorted Igor Pavlovich's face, and the fact that she lived in an ordinary dorm room, and that all turned her parents' groom in shock. Lyubovna Lvovna subtly teased her. "Nasenka, pass the lobster tongs." "No, they're not." "Why don't you eat anything? Or don't you like our food? I don't think they serve such delicacies in your dorm." Nastya blushed and was ready to fall through the earth. She wanted to get up and run away from here, but Seryoza was sitting next to her, and looking at her encouragingly, tried to joke casually, tried to change the subject, but it turned out, frankly, not very well. The situation became more and more heated. Suddenly Sashenka, who at this time was exploring a huge machine with a remote control presented by his grandfather, unluckily got off it and fell on the floor, and cried a lot. Seryoza twitched to run to his son, but Nastya overtook him, and instinctively rushed to the baby to comfort him. On the way she awkwardly pushed back a chair, and it fell with a crash. Lyubovna Tilivna grimaced. "What manners? Like an elephant in a china shop." "Seryoza, while your Nastya is away, let's talk." "Are you crazy? You've got one better than the other. The first one was a flowery hen with no brains. Now you've picked up an orphan with a handicap. What do you need her for?" Sergei was extremely indignant. "How can you? I love Nastya, and she loves me, and Sashenka doesn't give a damn about her at all. If it weren't for her, my son wouldn't even be alive." "You're crazy to say such terrible things." My father joined in the conversation. "Sergei, think about it. She's from an orphanage. Do you know what kind of kids go there? I bet she comes from a dysfunctional family. And that scar, where did she get it? She probably got it from her alcoholic parents too, right? Why do you need such a bride? We've already got an ambassador's daughter for you. Why don't you stop messing around with the marginalized and think about our family's reputation?" In the heat of the argument, no one noticed that Nastya had been standing behind their backs and could hear everything. Tears were choking her, and everything inside was bubbling with anger. She frantically began to rummage in her purse, and pulled out her father's Order of Courage, tossed it right in Igor Petrovich's face with the words, "How dare you judge a man without knowing anything about him? Who gave you the right? My parents aren't alcoholics at all. My father saved 15 people in an accident when the bus overturned and caught fire, and he died like a hero. They gave him a posthumous medal, and they sent me to an orphanage. I was only 7 years old at the time. I got that scar on my face from there. It burned me. Do you know what it's like to live in an orphanage after a family and a home? You didn't like me? Then I'll leave. But I won't stand for this kind of humiliation. You can't measure everything in life by money. There are still feelings, but you probably don't understand that." She abruptly turned around and was about to leave, holding back her sobs, when suddenly Igor Petrovich called her. "Nastya, wait, your last name is Grigorieva, isn't it? And your father's name was Yegor Yefimovich." "That's right, but what difference does it make to you? It can't be." "My God, it was him who got Libochka and Seryoska out of that ill-fated bus. They were going to the sea that day too. I took them there myself." Your father broke the glass with his feet, put his jacket on Seryoza and pulled him out in order not to cut him with splinters, and then he came back for Luba. I still admire his courage and bravery, and I am indebted to him. as I too could have lost my wife and son forever. The man suddenly got down on his knees and started begging. Forgive us, girl, forgive us for everything. We are eternally indebted to your father, too. And I heard that the hero died and was awarded posthumously, but I didn't know if he had any children or relatives. Now I am indebted to you, too. That's who you are, so brave and determined, kind and sympathetic. Don't go away, please do. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Lyubov and Natalina's eyes moistened, apparently flooded with those very memories, and she came up to the girl and embraced her wholeheartedly. I'm sorry, Nastya, it was me. I started a scandal, I got everybody all worked up, I offended you for nothing. To hell with her, with the ambassador's daughter. I promise I'll be a better mother-in-law, and no more mockery. So, peace. Nastya, too, cried out in an overload of emotion and nodded her head. Peace. I really love Seryoshka and Sashenka, and I can't imagine my life without them, and I'm happy that they came into my life. Now it's my meaning, my motivation. Do you think I like walking like a freak? Yes, ever since I was a child. I hate this damn scar, but how many times I have not applied to the hospital. The doctors only shrug their shoulders, saying that it's too big and deep, there's nothing you can do about it. They are afraid of hitting the facial nerve. Then, they say, it can paralyze my face. Igor Petrovich cheered her up. I can't promise anything yet, but I will try to help. I have an acquaintance in the northern capital, a master of his craft, a plastic surgeon from God. Let's go to him for a consultation. Maybe he'll come up with something. The rest of the evening went wonderfully. Lyubov and Natalina taught Nastya to eat those lobsters and oysters with laughter and jokes. She laughed and recalled incidents from her life. The first time they gave me an oyster to try at a dinner party, I was horrified. My mouth was full. My eyes rolled open. It was disgusting. I felt sick, and I cannot spit it out. I barely made it to the bathroom. Only much later I learned how to cook and eat them properly. Sergei laughed and hugged his bride and added, and I can't stand them at all. They're so slippery and disgusting. For me, the roast that Nastya makes in the oven is 100 times better. She's such a good girl, and how she can talk Sashka into it. It's just a talent. He now eats like a soldier, everything they put on his plate. The girl blushed and pressed herself closer to Sergei. She was insanely pleased with his warm words, and most importantly, his support. After all, he, like a lion, rushed to defend her from the attacks of her parents, and took her side, even in spite of them, and that was worth a lot. They returned home late at night. Sashenka fell asleep in the car in Nastya's arms. He sniffled so sweetly, hugging her, warming her with his warmth, and everything inside was singing with love for this small and so defenseless little man. A week later, Igor kept his word, raised all the doctors on their feet, and brought Nastya for a consultation with a plastic surgeon. Yuri Ivanovich was truly a virtuoso in his field. He was approached by the most famous stars and public people in the pursuit of beauty. Nastya drove without much hope for a miracle, because she had already been told repeatedly that it was impossible to correct the defect. But the doctor examined her for a surprisingly long and fastidious time, and gave his verdict. What can I say? The burn, of course, is very deep, but it can be repaired. It won't be cheap, and it will require several surgeries, probably 3, maybe 4, and that's anesthesia, pain, and a long healing time. Are you ready to endure all that? Igor Petrovich fussed. Don't worry about payment. I'll take care of everything. Well, what about you, Nastya? Will you make such a sacrifice? It's not 1 month we'll have to scurry around clinics with bandages on his face to walk. Or maybe you'll refuse. Seryoza loves you, and so do we. The girl was quiet, weighed everything, and answered, I'll take it all. I promise I won't cry once. Ever since I was a little girl, I've dreamt of getting rid of that ugly scar. I have endured so much mockery, so much ridicule because of it, not to count. So I agree. I cannot even believe that I can get rid of it. But it was easier said than done. Nastya had no idea, when she agreed, what a hell of a pain it was when the anesthesia wore off. How uncomfortable it was to walk around with a bandaged face, to endure painful injections and bandages. I had to quit my job when, after the first and most difficult surgery, It was time to remove the bandages. She was just shaking. She was panically afraid to look in the mirror and ask the nurse everything. "How is it out there? Is it a little better, or is it worse? I'm so scared. What if my face is even more twisted?" She calmed her down, smiled, and handed her the mirror. Nastia's joy was boundless when she saw that the scar had shrunk and smoothed out, and the skin was no longer tight. With each operation, the girl's face transformed, and after the third, final, she became just beautiful. Sergei watched and admired. He was terribly proud of his bride, supported her in everything, helped her through her pain and fear. In the meantime, Nastia had graduated from university by correspondence, but her degree was of no use to her. Her fiancé Tilda copyright fulfilled her long-held dream and got her a job as a swimming instructor. The girl was just happy, because it was her true calling. She enjoyed swimming and teaching others to swim. Moreover, Nastia was good at finding an approach to children, and they loved her wholeheartedly. Besides, her work took only a few hours a day, and the rest of the time she spent with Sashenka. She took care of him with great pleasure, and of course she did not forget about Sergei. Their nights were still unforgettable. 6 months later, the couple decided to have a big wedding. At first, Nastia refused, because she didn't like publicity, but Lyubov Anatolievna talked her into it. "Nastia, a wedding is such a momentous event. It should be at least once in every girl's life. After all, no matter what happens next, it's the wedding that comes to mind as the most touching moment. And that I want everyone around me to be jealous of what a beautiful woman my son will marry. One can only dream of a daughter-in-law like you." On the day of the celebration, Nastia was simply radiant. She looked at herself in the mirror, and could not believe her eyes. Gorgeous hair, delicate white dress, tiara, and no scar, only soft, supple skin. It seemed all her dreams had come true at once. There were many guests, photographers, and the press at the fancy restaurant. "It's no joke. The son of Korolev himself is getting married for the second time, and the bride, just a looker. You couldn't take your eyes off her." In the midst of the celebration, Sashenka took a microphone in his hands and decided to congratulate his parents, too. The boy, trying not to curse, said loudly and seriously, "Mama Nastia, congratulations. I wish you happiness with your daddy. You live together as a family, give birth to a baby brother soon." From such a touching poem, and the fact that Sashenka himself called her mother, Nastia could not stand it and cried. She jumped up to the baby, took him in her arms, hugged him and said, "Thank you, my good man, my son. I love you so much, and I won't give you up to anyone." The guests applauded for a long time, and many in the audience also shed tears as they watched this touching picture. Nastia had no idea that the surprise was almost ruined. The guards noticed in time that the drunken Inga was trying to sneak through the kitchen. After hearing on the phone from acquaintances that her ex was getting remarried to a young beauty, she became furious for some reason. Immediately she remembered her son, and decided to take him away. To be bold and uninhibited, she decided to drink cognac, but she overdid it. So the spectacle was not for the faint of heart. Inga rushed into the hall, barely standing on her feet, the makeup on her face smeared, and the heel of an expensive shoe broke off as she fought with the security guard. The woman shouted out, "What, you bastard, you want to get married? Did you find a young girl? He's my son, not hers. I'm the mother, and I'll take him, you know it." Sergei ran to the noise. Seeing his ex in such an unsightly state, he shuddered. After her tirade, he threw angrily, "Zakhr, take this woman to the hotel and make sure she doesn't cause us any more trouble. I never want to see her again." Then he grabbed her by the scruff of her coat, shook her, and said stiffly, "What kind of mother are you? You're a cuckoo, and you're a whore. Get out of my life. I took away your maternal rights, and you have no right to see Sashenka. And if you pester me, I'll make you pay alimony until your son turns 18. Get out." The guard firmly took her under his arms and dragged her to the car. She was hysterical for a long time, drinking cognac straight from her throat, and behaving ugly. And then she just collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep, just like she was, in her coat. In the morning she was awakened by a persistent knock on the door. The woman could barely get her head off the pillow. It was humming like a bell, her mouth was dry, and her whole body was aching. She waddled reluctantly to open the door. On the threshold stood, with a menacing look, Igor Petrovich. He squeamishly looked at the not yet fully sobered-up woman, put on the bedside table some papers, then said in an icy voice, "All right, sweetheart, here's your plane ticket and a lot of money. Your flight's in an hour. Get ready, and hurry up. Why did you come here? Your son divorced a long time ago. You never loved him, and you know it. You're not a good wife. You're an even worse mother. You've never looked after Sashenka. All you had in mind were your gigs and vacations with young lovers. Why do you want to see Sasha? What will you tell him? The boy just found a real loving family. Nastya loves him sincerely, and he's called her, you know, not you, his mother. So, let's say you take him, and what? You will not be able to devote all your time to him. You will quickly play at being a mother's daughter. And then what? The boy will suffer again? No way. You had a family, but you gave it up for fun. I will not let you ruin my son's life again. I'm warning you. If you ever set foot in this town again, you're on your own head. I'll make your life a living hell. You know me. Cab's downstairs. There's a guard at the door. Time's up. Get ready." The woman wrapped her arms around her head and shouted in anger, "But I gave birth to Sasha, which means I'm a mother." Igor Petrovich shook his head. "You're wrong. A mother is not the one who gave birth, but the one who loves the child, puts her heart and soul into it, and devotes her life to it. Remember that. All the best." And the man walked away, honking his step like in the army. And Inga fell back on her pillow and roared with helplessness and anger. She was angry. Damn. He's right about everything. Why, stupid. I did not live quietly. And now what? It's 30, and I'm alone. So tired of these resorts and young boys replacing each other. All this, it turns out, such a tinsel, and there is no happiness. One plop. And Seryoza and Nastya began a quiet and peaceful family life, without passions or scandals, but with warmth and caring for each other. They often went to the amusement park together on weekends, and had a lot of fun together with Sasha. They ate huge cotton candy and rode merry-go-rounds, just like when they were children, and they were absolutely happy. One day the newlyweds decided to order pizza at home, decided to watch an interesting comedy and not go anywhere. The doorbell rang. Nastya shouted, "It's the courier. I guess I'll get it, honey." Valera was standing on the doorstep of a gorgeous apartment. He didn't look very fresh, to put it bluntly. His cap pulled down over his eyes. When he saw the blooming Nastya, so beautiful, in an expensive silk robe, and without a single flaw on her face, he just lost the power of speech and began to mumble. "Good afternoon. Delivery orders." "Oh, Nastya, is that you? Wow, how great you look. Do you live here? Are you married?" "Risa left me, just like that. She played with me and left me. The sneaky viper. She threw me out on the street without a penny, like a mangy puppy. Now I'm working as a courier again. Can we meet like before?" Sergei came out to see what was taking Nastya so long, and asked in surprise, "Lovely, where did you get stuck? What took you so long? Is everything all right?" Nastya kissed him on the cheek and replied, "Yes, honey, it's okay." The courier was sloppy. He almost mixed up the order. She took the order, signed the receipt, and slammed the door in Valera's face. And he stood there with his mouth open, biting his elbows that he had lost such a beautiful and clever woman in pursuit of a long ruble. And in the end he was left like that old woman, from the tale of the fish and the fisherman, at the broken trough.